edition of Alaska Weather on the 10th day of November 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, first graphic here. Let's see what it is. Snowstorm coming in, especially the Seward area. There's a winter storm warning for heavy snow looking for, as you can see there, 12 to 18 inches there along the Seward Highway up to about Moose Pass. And pretty significant snowfalls expected up into the western Prince William Sound area, maybe 8 to 12 inches. Of course, the 12 inches there in the more mountainous terrain, but Whittier could see anywhere from 4 to 6 inches. Whittier, Portage, Girdwood, looking at 4 to 6 inches here over the next 24 hours by Thursday afternoon, or actually most of that falling tonight into tomorrow morning. And also maybe up to 6 inches areas of the western Kenai Peninsula, and lighter amounts around Cooper Landing, 1 to 2 inches there. But from Tyonek northward up towards Squentna, southern Susitna Valley, 6 to 8 inches of snow could fall there. And also along the northern Prince William Sound area into just north of Valdez, looking at 6 to 8 inches with 1 to 2 inches up toward Chickaloon, and then up toward Trapper Creek there into the northern Susitna Valley, Talkeetna, maybe 4 to 6 inches, or maybe only 3 to 5 inches. But looking at some pretty significant snowfall here across south central Alaska, and also for the southeast coast and the Panhandle. Winter weather advisory out, Juneau area, 6 p.m. Thursday to 8 a.m. Friday, and for Haines, 6 p.m. Thursday to 6 p.m. Friday. And looking at that more in detail, you can see the purple shaded areas, or no, that's not purple, that's blue, bluish. Anyway, the shaded areas there. Winter weather advisory out, that's where the advisories are, in those zones there. And again, like the first accumulating snow of the season in most of those areas, heaviest snowfall rates will occur late Thursday night, and then snow changing to rain on Friday. That low pressure responsible for the snow pulls northward along and ends up off the north coast Thursday after, or I mean Friday afternoon. It'll be off the north coast just south of Yakutat, and of course that'll drive warm air northward, and looking should change all sea level precipitation to rain even up in toward Haines and maybe even Skagway. And from there, looking at satellite imagery, not a bad day over the southeast coast today. You can see the first front there, a occluded front crossing the Queen Charlottes, or pushing into the Queen Charlottes. The main front, the back edge of the front, still south of there. But generally a dry day today for the Panhandle. Precipitation amounts, not all that great. Petersburg had about 3/100 of an inch. Cake picked up 1/4 of an inch of rainfall today, so still some showers going on. And Hoonah just shy of 1/10 of an inch. And then Yakutat there with that area of clouds, they had about an inch of snowfall occurring. And then areas of light snow falling over the south central Kenai Peninsula area during the day today. And then a clear swath though from Kamishak Bay up into southern Cook Inlet, and also rain over southwest Kodiak Island coming up from moisture there. But that front, Kodiak picked up about 1/1500 of an inch of rainfall. And then Sand Point had about a couple inches of snow, 1 to 2 inches of snowfall there. Otherwise, very light amounts elsewhere, pretty negligible on the precipitation amounts out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. A lot of cold air coming southward, but not a lot of moisture with it, just lower top clouds there with maybe some flurries or light snow showers. And up in the interior, kind of a cold start to the day. Let's see, Buckland was 26 below, I believe, for the low this morning, and other areas below zero as well, and some areas staying below zero into the afternoon hours. Fairbanks, though, above zero. You can see the moisture streaming from east-southeast to north-northwest there over the eastern interior, the mid and high-level moisture. And basically clear skies there off the southwest coast, especially Kuskokwim Bay, with the northeast flow down around Cape Newenham, picking up the clouds again in over the Bristol Bay area. And then the Arctic coast seeing some gusty west winds there with a low pressure area just near Kaktovik. And alpine airstrip seeing gusts to 30-35 miles an hour to the west-southwest today. So look for areas of snow and blowing snow there through tonight and then actually through tomorrow up there. Probably in the next couple of days it stays windy with low pressure to the north, higher pressure to the south. Otherwise, that front pushing northward, just rained into the Queen Charlottes. Not a bad day over the Panhandle today. Low pressure circulating moisture up into the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, south central Alaska with the areas of light snow falling, but that's going to increase here this evening and overnight tonight into tomorrow. Another system bringing some light snow from Norton Sound along the Yukon Delta coast, trailing back toward the Pribilof Islands, but amounts very light with that. For tonight, again, winter storm warning for heavy snow for the Seward area. South of Moose Pass could see up to a foot of snow falling. Winter weather advisories out for south central Alaska. The Kenai Peninsula, again, 4 to 6 inches of snow falling. 3 to 5 in the forecast for Anchorage currently. And then, as I mentioned, 4 to 6 inches Girdwood, Portage, Whittier in those areas, and even some snow up into the Copper River Basin. But don't look for too much across the Alaska Range yet. Look for snow, blowing snow, eastern Arctic coast. That'll continue into Thursday, tomorrow, with those gusty winds as high as 30 to 40 miles an hour to the west and southwest, with that low center sitting just off the coast there. Otherwise, by contrast, light variable winds out over the western Aleutians, right under high pressure, and mostly clear sky, so fair amount of sunshine possible out that way tomorrow. And showers with the flow coming around the top of that high. Showers start to increase, Adak, Atka, and then snow showers or rain and snow showers for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Another batch of snow showers dropping into the Pribilof Islands, extending up to the Yukon Delta coast. And otherwise, the western interior looking pretty good, cold and dry with light winds, but winds on the increase, especially through the passes of the western Alaska Range, Kodiak Island, getting a little brisk, and then definitely high-end gale force winds coming up. It could be even a narrow band of storm force winds in events of that occluded front coming up to the south coast tomorrow. So winds and precipitation on the increase from south to north there for the Panhandle, and look for storm force northerly wind gusts for Lynn Canal developing tomorrow afternoon. And taking a look at Friday, snow starts to taper off Cook Inlet and eventually for the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, but areas of light snow continue North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, right up into the eastern interior, central eastern Tanana Valley, 40-mile country to north of Eagle, but that's going to be pretty darn light up there, maybe just flurries or minimal accumulations. Back to the west, cold high pressure centered up over the Seward Peninsula and other center western Brooks Range. So cold and mostly clear over the western interior, west of the Alaska Range. Of course, overnight lows falling below zero there. Still some flurries along the Arctic coast. Wind still pretty gusty out of the west-southwest, maybe to 30 miles an hour. High pressure shifts eastward a little bit there and flattens over the Bering Sea. And a lot of moisture starting to flow up and around over the top of that. Looks like periods of rain for the far western Aleutians, taking a turn to the west and then taking a turn to the south. So rain and snow showers for the Fox Islands and Pribilofs, maybe the Alaska Peninsula. That'll be pretty light. But look for the northerly and northwest winds to increase. Again, Cook Inlet into Kodiak Island, especially through the passes of the western Alaska Range. Copper River Basin looking at increasing northerly winds as well. That low center pulls northward there up the coastline, so strong winds in the afternoon. Looks like gale force winds on the north coast and pretty breezy over the inside waters, but warmer air getting pulled northward along with that, riding in on those south and southwest winds. So again, snowfall levels will be above sea level by Friday afternoon. Looking at lows tonight, mid to upper 20s northern Panhandle, mid 30s to the south. Copper River Basin down to around zero. Teens in the Susitna Valley, otherwise lower to mid 20s for the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound area, lower 30s for Kodiak Island. Quite a contrast there going across the Aleutian Range. 0 to 5 below for Bristol Bay, mid to upper 20s Alaska Peninsula, and 5 to 10 below for the Kuskokwim Valley. Same thing for the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, but single numbers out toward the coastline. Lows in the mid 20s for the Pribilofs, and in the 30s for the Aleutians, and lows 10 to 20 below over the interior, milder though for the Arctic coast. And highs tomorrow, 15 to 20 for the Arctic coast, near zero over the interior, some areas staying below zero like the Kobuk Valley. Ambler 6 below for your forecast high, single numbers west of the Alaska Range, and then 20s to lower 30s over south central Alaska, 35 for Homer, mid 30s for the coastal areas of the North Gulf Coast, and highs mid 40s southern panhandle, upper 30s to the north, and Friday morning lows below zero central interior, anywhere from 5 to 20 below zero, warmer on the Arctic coast, followed by highs Friday afternoon 10 to 15 for the Arctic coast, near zero in the central interior, 20s to the south, mid to upper 40s for the southern panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic tomorrow morning, marginal VFR North Slope Arctic coast, circling around through the Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula, central Seward Peninsula as well, down to the Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island to the Pribilofs. But looks like VFR for the Aleutians, southern Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, right on up into the Bristol Bay area and into the interior. Some IFR over the Yukon Flats, and then IFR there for Cook Inlet and the Susitna Valley, part of the Matanuska Valley, Prince William Sound of the Copper River Basin, VFR for the Panhandle, some marginal VFR up along the south coast, Kodiak Island, IFR. And for the afternoon, we've got IFR spreading over the southern Panhandle, marginal VFR working its way into the central part of the southeast coast, staying VFR up north, and North Gulf Coast, VFR, Prince William Sound, marginal VFR, South Central Alaska, marginal VFR, and that extends up and across the Alaska Range into the Nenana Fairbanks area, maybe even the White Mountains. IFR, though, southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak, western Kachemak Bay, down to northern Kodiak Island. Looks like right down to about the Chiniak Marmot Bay area. Otherwise, Bristol Bay VFR, again the Aleutians, and northern Bering Sea marginal VFR, and now just marginal for the eastern Arctic coast and North Slope. And then for Friday morning, marginal VFR, northern Bering Sea to St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island, just grazing Yukon Delta coast. Southern Bering Aleutians VFR, Alaska Peninsula VFR, southern Alaska VFR, as well as much of the western and central interior. Some marginal VFR, though, along the Alaska Range into the upper Tanana Valley 40 Mile Country, actually north of Eagle there, up to about south of the Porcupine River, northern Copper River Basin, IFR, all of the southeast coast, with Yakutat right on the edge. And then for the afternoon Friday, IFR, North Slope Arctic coast, suddenly marginal VFR blooms across the southern Bering Sea, Aleutians, and Alaska Peninsula to Kodiak Island, into the Gulf, Northeast Pacific, Panhandle, IFR, Lincoln Glacier Bay, and over toward the eastern border. IFR along and north of the central and eastern Alaska Range there. Most of the Yukon River Valley, VFR. And for passes, marginal VFR on the northern entrance of both Anatuvik and Atigan tomorrow, with Lake Clark and Merrill. Look for marginal VFR at times throughout the day. Rainy. Lowest conditions, eastern entrance for rainy, and then windy, marginal VFR at times. Isabel looks marginal. Mentasta, though, VFR. Tanita, marginal VFR. And Portage, same forecast, marginal VFR, either entrance for the day on Thursday. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels at the surface, south of the Alaska Peninsula, east of Kodiak Island, just north of the Pribilofs there. Otherwise, 2,000 feet over the south coast of the Panhandle. And as far as icing goes, areas of isolated moderate for the southeast coast, North Gulf Coast into southern Alaska, some of that slipping on up to just south of the Yukon River. North Slope Arctic coast, some isolated moderate icing, and maybe some mixed icing out over the Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. And taking a look at the jet stream, good northerly jet, high pressure centered near Shimianatu, aloft, and we've got northerly winds up to 120 knots through the central Bering Sea, right down across Adak and Atka, a little more northeasterly there. Cold upper low right over the western Alaska Range, cyclonic flow around that, and then up to 65 to 85 knot winds into the Panhandle. And for 9,000 feet, 35 to 40 knot winds from the north there across the Bering Sea and southwest Alaska, Bristol Bay. Southerlies 50 knots, but notice a 75 knotter south of Dixon Entrance. And at 3,000 feet, we've got 55 knot winds off the southeast coast, north 40 across northeast Bristol Bay from the southern Kuskokwim Valley, and northerlies over the Bering Sea. And for turbulence, look for considerable moderate turbulence over the southeast coast, especially southern areas, working slowly northward. North Gulf Coast mechanical moderate chop with cold outflow winds along the North Gulf Coast of the passes, and southern Cook Inlet, western Alaska Range, down along the Aleutian Range, all the way to the Fox Islands. Moderate chop, especially for small aircraft, and also up on the eastern Arctic coast. Look for possible considerable moderate turbulence there, otherwise light to isolated moderate for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, you know, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was or how fortunate. Of course, I just, you know, spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything. So you got to remember that, you know, luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at sea ice analysis from November 7th and then comparing it to today. As you can see, it's closed off now from the Russian coast to the northwest coast, and the area in the Chukchi Sea continues to shrink as the areas of ice increase. Moving on to the next graphic here, you can see how it again closes off there across the southern Chukchi Sea. Still a band of open water there from the Bering Strait along and in toward or north of the Seward Peninsula, but the overall pattern for the next few days has continued to see increased ice extent, especially north of the Bering Strait. And from there, coastal water forecast, gale warnings for Thursday along the coast, south to south or central coast, east winds 40 to 45 knots, seas around 20 feet. South coast southeast at 40 knots, and the north coast east at 35 knots. Gale warnings for Lynn Canal. North sustained 35 knots, gust to 55 knots, places like Eldred Rock. And north winds 20 knots with the higher gusts in the normally gusty areas there of the Passage Canal area, central inner channels. And then swinging around to the southeast at 25 knots for Clarence Strait with seas at about 11 feet. And for Friday, along the south coast, good stiff southwest breeze at 30 knots with seas around 17 feet. Gale warnings on the north coast for south winds at 35 knots. And then for Lynn Canal, sustained gale force northerlies, 35 knots. Probably keep the higher gusts in there as well. For Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait, small craft advisories for the day Friday for south winds at 25 knots with seas at 5 feet. And moving west, North Gulf Coast, southeast winds tomorrow, 15 to 20 knots, seas around 6 to 7 feet. Prince William Sound, east winds at 20 knots, seas 3 feet. Northeast at 20 for Cook Inlet, and northwest 25 for Kamishak Bay, with seas at 9 feet. The Barren Islands, northeast winds at 20 knots. And Friday, Cook Inlet, north winds 10 to 15 knots. Prince William Sound, northeast at 15. North Gulf Coast, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, seas around a little over 10 feet. Gale warnings for Kamishak Bay, northwesterlies 35 knots, 12-foot seas. Northwest at 30 for the Barren Islands with 12-foot seas. And for the Kodiak Island area, north to northwest 20 to 25 knots tomorrow. Alaska Peninsula, north 25 to 30 knots, seas around 8 feet. North at 20 for Bristol Bay with 3-foot seas. Those become northwest at 20 for Bristol Bay on Friday with seas running 5 feet. Alaska Peninsula, northwest 25 to 30 knots. Small craft advisories there, seas at 8 feet. And then for Castle Cape to Sitkinak, gale warnings, northwest 35 knots. Kodiak Island, northwest 25 to 30 knots with seas as high as 12 feet. For Unalaska Island, tomorrow, north winds 25 to 30 knots. Unmak Island, north 20 to 25 knots. AKwx, north at 20, seas 7 feet. Same thing for Amchitka Island. Kiska to Shimia, light variable winds under high pressure at 10 knots with 5-foot seas. That's ends kind of the calm before the storm out west there, because on Friday, gale warnings reappear from Kiska to Shimia south, increasing to 35 knots, seas building to 13 feet. Otherwise, Amchitka, southwest 25, Adak northwest at 20, small current advisories for the Fox Islands, northwest winds 25 knots, sea 7 to 9 feet. Southwest coast, northerlies 20 to 25 knots. Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, looking at northwest winds at 20 knots with 6-foot seas, north winds 20 knots. For St. Lawrence Island, seas 5 feet. And then for the day Friday, Norton Sound increases a little bit up to 20 knots from the north there, northwest at 20 for St. Lawrence Island. Yukon Delta coast laying down to 15 knots from the northwest with a 4-foot sea height. Small craft advisories for St. Matthew Island, west 25 knots, northwest at 20 knots for the Pribilofs, and north 30 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Up along the eastern Boulevard Sea coast, for Thursday, 25 knot westerlies, brisk wind advisories there. Otherwise, central coast north at 15, northeast at 10 on the west side, 20 knots, 10 to 20 knot winds from Cape Beaufort to Wales. And for Friday, brisk wind advisories, eastern Arctic coast, west to southwest 25 knots, northwest at 20 knots for the central coast, northwest at 10 for the west side, and the southeast southern Chukchi Sea, Wales to Cape Thompson, northwest winds 15 knots. Tonight, snow increasing up to a foot expected in the next 24 hours for Seward, with 4 to 6 inches across northern Cook Inlet.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.